all or nothing mentality is also very important to have when it comes to wanting to do something, especially when you're having something to deal with risk, because then it's like, if you don't give your all, you're gonna look back at it and be like, dang, regret, yeah. So. Welcome back to another episode of Real Talks. My name is M.O.O.N. I'm the host of Real Talks, and today I have with me, in my opinion, a very special guest. For one, he was like a teacher, educator, mentor, like a brother from another mother. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Lawrence Harris.
Thank you.
Well, I was going to say I appreciate you taking the time to come out on the show. I know you have one of the busiest schedules for the people I know. But yeah, you took the time to come out here, so
absolutely
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, if you want to give the people viewing a little background of who you are.
Yeah. So as M.O.O.N. said, happy to be here today. Lawrence Harris. I currently serve as the Chief of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships for the Clarke County School District. I also operate a nonprofit here in town called College Factory, where we help high school students access scholarships, college applications, everything from FAFSA completion, NCAA eligibility. Love the Athens community, been here for several years at this point.
Yeah.
Graduated from UGA, went to the University of Pennsylvania. So I'm excited to be here today and share hopefully a little bit of knowledge, hopefully to talk about something.
Yeah, and he didn't mention, I'm his like special projects intern. I'm just that guy.
He is.
But like he just gave the brief background of himself. This dude has done a lot of amazing things, not only for Athens, but just like for a whole community of people in general. With that, he's fairly young. Like, you're only
30.
Okay, 30. So
I'll share.
But with him, being able to be the CEO at the Career Academy and then work your way to be the director, it's not like you could just wake up one day and do that. With that, you had to probably over time take some risks that help you get to that point. And that's what we're talking about today. It's like the stigma of taking risks and the right ones to take.
Yeah.
So I want to start off by saying, I feel like people who are, I guess you can say, at the top, or people who become successful, like very successful, if you ask them about their story of like where they went or what they had to do to get there, it always involves having to take that leap or take that risk.
Yeah.
So I would just like to say, I feel like taking risks is very important.
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think most people I've talked to have had to say, even as you're saying, I'm thinking about the different decisions I've had to make in life, which was very much a risk to step out and say, well, if I don't do this, then what? And so what's stopping me from really taking that risk to help get me to a different level, whether it's in a career, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's with family. So I agree.
Them are the three main areas where risks are very important, because like, for one, I'm going to say the first one, relationship. Even just having that courage to ask a girl, hey, will you go out, can I take you on a date? That's a risk in itself, because you might be afraid of getting that no.
Yep.
Then family, that's a whole different story where, you might have a lot going on. And, you either have to be that person to, just make that one decision, which is a risk in itself, or you have to put your foot down and be like, look, this is how we're going to do it.
Yep.
Then you said the career piece is like, to get to where you want to be, you're not going to be, you have to step out of that comfort zone of just doing the things you're comfortable every day. So,
I mean, think about it. I mean, if you think, college students, right? Change their major all the time.
Right.
And that's, it sounds simplistic, but a college student changing their major second or third year in, it's a risk though. It's a risk for like, should I change from biology to psychology, or my credit's going to transfer. So you almost have to make a logical decision, but you have to say like, it's a balance of, I'm taking this risk because I think there's a greater good on the opposite side, right? If I don't do this, well, I always live with, if I did, I wish I had done that. So like, is the regret worth not just stepping out in that moment?
Yeah, facts. But I feel like some people like end up growing up and having that moment where they're like, dang.
Yeah.
I didn't do what I wish I did.
Yeah.
So like, so when it comes to that, I was gonna say, why do people struggle with taking risks now? Like, at first, when people, to reach their success, that was like a known thing to, you have to jump outside the box. You have to do what somebody else won't do. But now it's like, people are more so focused on, this is the way that works. So this is what I'm going to do,
Yeah.
So what happened? Yeah.
So do you want the science nerdy answer, or do you want like the just social, this is what I observed?
Yeah, let's do the social one.
Okay, because I was gonna nerd out on the science. I do want to say just a part of that being like, I think even if you think as kids, right, like when you're born, this is the science piece, so I need to ask for this side.
Okay.
But think about it, like when a baby learns to walk, right, that's a risk, right? They're gonna fall, they're gonna hurt themselves, but do they just stay down and say, well, guess I'm never walking again, I'm just gonna lay here on the floor?
Right.
No, it's a risk. Every time they get back up. And I think at some point, in life, we allow the fear to stop us from taking risks, and we allow the fear to kind of outweigh what the benefit could be. So, if we had decided as young children that, like, oh, I'm afraid I'm never going to walk, I'm never going to do this, you could step down and be like, well, I guess this is it. Like, you're just going to live on your stomach like a snake.
Yeah.
I think the social piece of it is, too, is like we also don't want to fail. Right. We don't want to look like less than what we are. We don't want to make decisions. The relationship thing, right? Like, you don't want to go out on a limb and get told, no, I don't want to go on a date with you. I don't want to talk to you. And it's like, you had this expectation that it wasn't going to be a no. Or with a career, you say, oh, I'm going to leave my job. Now, you should never leave a job till you have a new one. But if you're going out to interview and you're like, all right, I'm going to try this. I've never done this before. That fear of rejection. So I think fear is the reason people don't take risks.
True. But on that social aspect, though, like, I feel like when it comes to like how people, like you said, how people judge you, like if you fail versus if you succeed on taking a risk. So that part is part of that fear that is built. I feel like that comes from, that's like that age gap where when you're a kid, you don't care about nothing. Like you're gonna do what you feel like doing. But then it's a shift where it's like, dang, I need to make sure that Johnny and Sally likes what I'm doing. So like, that part personally, I would say I did go through that a little bit, even before, deciding to do this whole podcast. Like, for one, I never was a videographer or nothing like that. So going from not doing that to wondering how people are going to either criticize or, apply. Granted, I get a lot of applause for what I do, but like,
yes,
of course,
you're good at it.
But of course, as people grow, critics come regardless. So that's one thing I would say I have to be prepared for. But that's part of that risk factor that sometimes people stop them from actually pursuing what they want to. Then you had said something.
Well, can I touch on that real quick?
Yeah.
I think, it's interesting to say that because, like, it does happen. I think it happens to all of us, right? I think even probably people watching can think about when they were a kid at some point. It could have been elementary school, middle school, high school. Usually happens in the earlier years. Right. You kind of even get to the point where you think about the clothes you wear, the way your hair looks. You start developing this identity. And a lot of times it's based off people around you, your parents, what they may say to you. They may say like, oh, you're smart, you can sing, you can dance, you can't do art, you can't draw. So you get these belief systems about yourself. And so then when you're in a space where someone's, hey, you want to try this out? Your brain is clicking and you're like, oh, I don't know. Like, how am I going to look? What are people going to think of me? Like, oh, I can't dance. And then you don't do it. And then, but I think even with this, what you're doing this podcast, you become comfortable in it. You start to become better at it. Exactly. I imagine you weren't perfect the first day you said, I'm doing a podcast. You came out day one, 1 million followers, viewers. And look at you now. So, it takes time. It takes practice. You got to set up. So
I remember my first video, moving a lot.
shaking a little bit.
Talking very, very fast. Right. But I still jumped out there and took that risk.
And you kept at it.
Yeah, but I will say, though, me personally, I don't have one of those YOLO mindsets. And, I ain't going to...
You have a YOLO mindset?
What is it?
YOLO, like you only die once? Because that's... I just feel like you can reverse it.
Whoa. That's fine. I never thought about it.
That's the way I was thinking about it. Like.
But so, that's kind of the reason why. Because it's like, you only live once, but you still have to, be cautious of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But I would say for those people who do have that mindset, they're more likely to step out of their comfort zone all the time and, like, take them extra steps to... whatever will help them reach their next success, that next level. Because sometimes that is what stops them from having like, well, what if this happens versus what if this happens? And looking at both sides, that's one of the things that people have a hard time doing. Yep.
That question right there, what's the worst that can happen? Right? Like, and if you can't answer that, the answer to that isn't death. Right. And sometimes it could be death, and that may be a time to really pause and say like maybe, but doing your podcast, right? Stepping out on a job or career, like, it could mean that you don't get it, but is that killing you? Right. Is that, so I think that's another thing and that's how I live my life. I always look to myself saying like, what's the worst that can happen? If it's a hard conversation I have to have with somebody, what's the worst that can happen? They can get mad. They can say we're not friends anymore. Okay, now I know that's the consequence. Yeah, there's 8-point-something billion people in the world. I may find another one of you, like statistically speaking. So like, I mean, not to say I want to lose friends, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I do get what you're saying. So ask that question. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can? You know, that's actually one of those questions that I forget to ask myself because going into things, I'm always like, okay, it can either go this way, it can either go this way, but I never be like, okay, well, this is the worst that can happen, and like, you know, it's still gonna be okay. Life still goes on. Yeah, I mean, but you know, you brought up a good point earlier about like really just that industry, the career industry, and like saying you want to start your own business. Say, for instance, me. I mean, I still work, I mean, you're an intern right now, so. But I know for my future, I want to go further with my podcast and my motivational speeches and stuff. But you have brought up a good point about, you know, being able to just take that risk. But you said, you know, you want to advise somebody to just drop their job and unless they have another one. But I know some people listening will be like, I don't know if I agree with that. Yeah. So what do you got to say about that? So let me clarify. I think, you know, if you're in a space where your life circumstances aren't set up to where that gap will, and it still won't kill you. You know, you just may have to go through a period of what they call humble struggle, where you may just eat differently and live differently. I do think that, you know, that's I think there's a difference between the risk and then also like the balance of knowing that, hey, I need to put my all into something so that way it can be successful. Because I mean, ultimately, I mean, if you're going to start your own business, it can be very successful. It can grow to a multi-billion-dollar industry. That's huge. You could also fail and flop, which is also not necessarily the end of the world. You probably learned a lot of stuff along the way that you can now take with you to the next business. All right, now I know maybe not invest all my Bitcoins in there because I probably need to eat, you know, at night, you know. So I do want to back that up and say, no, if you have something you truly believe in, that's a risk, but that's maybe a good risk to take. You know what? This business is worth it. But you guys said that all or nothing though. Yeah, which is one of the things personally, I like. Even though if you listen to a lot of you know, folks like, for instance, a lot of rappers, they always talk about, you know, they spent hours in the studio when they first started because they needed to, you know, this was their career, this was their future career. But it's hard to do that all or nothing because, like you said, you still have to, you might be the one that cares for the family, you might be that centerpiece, and like without money, then it's hard to just have that all or nothing. But that all or nothing mentality is also very important to have when it comes to wanting to do something, especially when you're having something to deal with risk, because then it's like, if you don't give your all, you're going to look back at it and be like, dang, like, regret. So now you might either regret that you even tried it, or you might regret that you didn't really give it all that you had. So, I mean, God, you're speaking so much truth. Hope y'all are listening to this, man. I mean, because, even with that, right, I even think when you think all or nothing, it's also in that moment. So, like, if you, let's say, even while you're working on a podcast, you know, all or nothing to me means in that moment I've set aside, it's a priority. Right. So like all or nothing to me doesn't mean like you have to give your 100% to one thing all day, every day, because you are going to have competing family, relationships. Right. I mean, bills are going to come up. Friends may say, hey, this and that. And I know some people believe in like, I cut off all my friends for 3 years, never talk to them because I'm focused on that. Is so hard. If that's your choice, that's your choice. But you could also say, you know what? The time that I'm spending watching TV, playing video games, laying outside, looking up at the sky for 3 hours, I'm going to reallot that time because I'm focused on my business. I'm focused on my podcast or whatever it is you're trying to do. Maybe even putting down the phone for a little bit. And saying like for these 2 hours, no phone calls, no text. Yep. But like people who do that 3 years and it's a little strange. It seems a little isolating. Plus, most phones, I'm sure your phone does it. They do the screen time. Look at your screen time for the week, and if it says you were on Instagram for 8 hours of the week, that's an entire work shift. Imagine how much of your personal goals you could have met in 8 hours. Like I know I got that bad. I'll be trying not to just get on Instagram and like just be scrolling. It's addicting. Yeah, it's a science behind scrolling too. You know, they researched it. And it says something on Netflix that they talk. I forgot what it's called. I really wish I could tell y'all what. Social dilemma. Yes, the social dilemma. It talks about how it's the science behind. It's the whole science. Tapping freaking ads and that's swiping. Yeah, even the motion of your finger, because like it sets off something in our brain that's like pleasurable. We scroll. I just scroll for hours. That's to stay away from that. It's hard, man. More power to you. Exactly. I was scrolling for an hour this morning. I'm also thinking about like when people talk, give it your 100%, because I do tell, I mean, teams I work with, my staff, my family, you can't give 100% to multiple things, right? Like, eventually you're going to start giving 80% to something or 60% to something, no matter how, like, none of us are Superman or Superwoman.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, even when you talk about putting everything in, so first thing that came to my mind was like, well, I could give 100% to like 2 or 3 things, but if my list starts being like 10 or 15, family starting to get 80, this relationship may start getting 60, I may be lonely in a couple weeks, so like, you know.
Right.
You gotta, I think it's all about prioritization.
Yeah, because I feel that, because for one, I definitely got more ideas I want to like launch in the future, but I know I can't focus on all of them at once, so I just brought it down to focus on the motivation podcast for now, because I know if I put most of my time in that now, then it'll steadily increase.
It stacks.
Yeah, it stacks, and then eventually I have that extra time to work on the other ideas.
It builds on each other.
Yep, and that's that time management piece. I guess.
Oh God, that's a whole top. That's a whole other podcast, y'all. Time management.
Time management. But I mean, that's all I gotta say about taking risks. I mean, I think I said everything I need to say. You got anything else to say?
No, I mean, I appreciate you having me today. I mean, I think it's a great topic. I mean, I just encourage anybody who's watching the podcast or tuning in just to think about, you know,
definitely drop more than just whole standard of taking risks. We definitely drop some like a little motivation there, a little, you know, a little thing to think about. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you coming out on it. So like I said earlier, you do have one of the busiest schedules I know. And then this man calendar is always packed. I'm surprised I even got him for this hour. But
barely.
But one thing I like to do before I close is to see if you had any closing advice you'd like to leave for somebody that's, let's say, struggling, you know, taking that risk, say if they want to, you know, go into a business or they want to go to that next level of success, like if they're just in that mindset of like they don't know if they should do it or not, like what's some advice to give to something? I mean,
I'm gonna try to sum it up into 3 things. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say before you give that advice, I know this is gonna be some advice for me too, because I'm in one of those like areas where like I don't know exactly where I want to go next, but I still see my vision. So yeah.
It may be 2 things. We'll see. I think the first thing that came to mind is if you want to take a risk, ask that question I said earlier. What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
And if the worst thing that can happen scares you, it may be a good thing. That may mean the motivation to say like that's worth stepping out. Because if it scares you so much that you get excited about like this is crazy what this could be, that means it's probably something you should do because it's in your soul. I think the second thing I would say is think about what it will feel like. Like take a moment and think about what would it feel like to know in the future like you didn't do it.
Right.
Think about what it would feel like to think back and say, like, what if I had stepped out and started a business or started that relationship or called my parents one more time, you know, whatever it may be. Think back. And you can't predict the future, but if you can reflect on that, your body will just naturally tell you that. If you feel like, agonizing or pain, or you feel like a pull or tug, it's probably your soul or your spirit or something telling you this is worth it. And then the last thing I say is don't move in silence. I mean, not don't, but move in silence. Like take out the don't. Move in silence. You know, find those people you can trust and share your ideas with that are going to build you up and encourage you. Because we all know we all have haters out there. But haters are good. I appreciate haters because that usually means you're doing something right. So if you have people saying, you can't do that, you don't have no skill set, that's the best time to be like, okay, cool. Like, you're hating on me for a reason. So find the good people. Surround yourself by good energy. People are going to push you and say, hey, step out there. Go skydive. Maybe not skydive, but, you know, go take a risk.
Yeah, I like that. Well, overall, do you have a third piece or was it just 2?
I couldn't remember the third one. It may hit me as we turn on, but, you know.
But both
check out another episode. They'll find it.
Definitely. Because let me just go ahead and say, even though this is real talk, but I would definitely like for you to come on Words of Wisdom, where it's more so where you give that wisdom of yours, even though you're only in your mid-30s, you done been through something.
Mid-30s. Elevated. I'm 30.
But you done been through some things. I know you have a lot of wisdom just from like what you share with me, but also like you're just an intelligent man. So yeah,
I appreciate it.
But yeah, that advice, like just especially the second part where you said don't share your ideas with everybody. You know, definitely find that group of people that you can trust that's gonna more so like help you elevate to that point you're trying to get to. Because some people will take your ideas and like either if they know it's a good idea, they be like, nah, you don't need to do that. You need to just stick to it, knowing that you know that's something that you need to actually pursue. Or they might try to not help you pursue it. Then like they're just dragging you down at that point. So definitely,
you want the people that are gonna hold you accountable too, right?
Right.
If I say I'm gonna publish an episode once a week, you know, you want that friend to be like, hey, well, how's the episode coming?
Definitely.
Like it's coming out still on Tuesday, right? And you'd be like, nah, I was gonna. No, you said every Tuesday. Like, what do you need to do? So accountability partners.
But before we close, like I said, I do appreciate you coming out. This was a great conversation. I feel like this side note, I feel like this was one of my most like conversational conversations so far. So definitely appreciate you. Definitely appreciate it. And that's all I got for this episode. You got anything else you want to say?
Can I keep the water?
Definitely can keep it water.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But other than that, we're going to go ahead and close out, y'all. And we'll see y'all next time.